All right, I want to talk about 6 things that I've seen change in the self-storage industry since 2021, so past 5 years. Um, a lot has changed, and there are definitely more items than these 6 that I have, but these are the first 6 that came to my mind, that have really impacted things, and some things are things that I'm doing, some things have just happened, and you have to kinda follow what everyone else is doing in a way. But some things are non-negotiables, and we'll kind of get into those. So number one is, and I remember, and not picking on the storage group that I was a part of, but I remember a lot of this is how much has changed. A lot of investors, storage investors, were buying storage facilities to double the value. So let's say they bought them for 300,000. They were hoping to double that value within 12 months to 600,000, and use any number, right? Buying for 500, they want to be a million in 12 months of value. That's Can you still find those deals? Yeah, you can find them. Are they much harder to find? Without a doubt. Deals have, for the most part, every single self storage owner has been approached by someone wanting to buy or sell their facility. Are there some out there that haven't been approached? Probably, but probably not many. So for the most part, sellers are, I guess the easy ones were kind of picked over, right? The ones that you could buy for 500, 12 months later, now they're worth a million or 1.4 or whatever, right? Those deals are somewhat dried up, and there's some things that go into that. But a lot of those, and even for myself, I mean, a few of my first deals, I was the first person to ever reach out to that owner to buy their facility. They didn't think it was worth anything. They were just happy to get out of it. And that was probably my first, at least 3 deals. Probably first 4 or 5. Um, they as I went on, the owners became more sophisticated and knew they had an asset, but still didn't think they had many people knocking on their door to buy it. So that's definitely changed. It's harder to buy now to double the value. And for me, and I've always said this, one, I'm after cash flow. So I'm not necessarily worried about the value. To me, the cash flow will take care of that part. And I'm looking to hold. I'm buy and hold. A lot of the people that were buying to double value were in a way flipping, whether they sold it or maybe they bought it with private money and then they went to refinance it to get a bank loan on it. But a lot of times, I think the people that were buying to double the value would sell. And we are also on an upward trajectory. Assets in general, from 20 to 23 ish for those 2 years, 3 years, um, assets were basically just kept going up in value. So that's where buying to double the value did work, and it's gotten harder now. Not just because deals have been picked over, but because values have dropped because the rates went up, right? Now interest rates seem to be, it feels like, stabilizing right now, which obviously values go hand in hand with that. Number two, I now underwrite with fees. So when we talk fees and self storage, you've got a move-in fee, you can have a setup fee, you can have administration fee, and you may not have all those, but maybe it's called something like that. You've got tenant insurance or tenant protection. We actually provide um, tenant insurance. Ours isn't tenant protection. We actually have insurance. My understanding is, and we're told, and from what we've seen, renters get better coverage from actual insurance than just a tenant protection plan. Um, there's auction fees. There's all kind of fees. We actually have at some sites. Most of our sites are gated. You can only get in from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then the gate's locked. Can't get in or out. We will offer the 24-hour access, but we charge for it. And I don't know a number off the top of my head. It may be $30, $35 a month for that. But that's another fee. There's another fee that just slipped my mind too. That's merchant fees, credit card processing. We just started implementing that probably about 6 months ago. So any new renter, we haven't done it for existing renters, but any new renter you are now paying credit card fees, and for them, it's super small, right? Some people aren't even paying $1 for the credit card fee. For us, now that we're scaling and have scaled, that's a big fee for us. So to be able to hand that off to, you know, um, thousands of customers is definitely helpful for us. So we are now underwriting with fees. Back 4, 5, 6 years ago, I certainly wasn't underwriting for fees. The big boys, they were the REITs. I have no idea. I'm not really sure. I'm not tuned to that game. But yeah, if you're not underwriting, including the fees now, you could be missing out on some deals. That kind of number three kind of plays into that. Um, Back in 2020, 2021, I was underwriting basically rent roll at 100% for the deals that I was buying then, and it worked because deals back then, most sites were 100% full. That's not really the case anymore. And if it is the case, that means that owner is one, you found probably a gold mine because that owner is probably really under the market for rental rates. So that's probably a really good deal to look at. But every deal that I've looked at, I mean, if they're 100% full, it's because they've got 50 units, right? And it's just 50 units is hard to kind of make a dent in things. For your first deal, may make sense. But yeah, there's very few places that are 100% occupied right now. What I'm finding is 85 to 90% occupied is, I don't know what average is, but in my areas, that seems to be where we're at. And then to kind of piggyback off that, customer service is a huge thing, right? And that wasn't the case 5, 6 years ago. I remember I started with Easy Storage Solutions as a software, which was great for my first couple sites. I also used their call center. And when COVID hit, and I've talked about this, when COVID hit, everybody, it seemed like every storage owner went with Easy Storage Solutions for the call center. So they just got inundated. They didn't have enough staff. And I remember months, if not maybe close to a year, where I had, I don't know, I want to say at least half of my phone calls not even being answered or called back. And we were still close to 100% occupied across the board. It was that easy. Now COVID, and I've talked about it before, had a lot to do with that. Stimulus checks, all those things that kind of went with COVID had a lot to play in that. But yeah, I'm not underwriting at 100% anymore. I will look at to see what the current owner is at, where their occupancy is at, and usually I just kind of go with that number. I'll see how strong their rental rates are too in the market, but I'm not expecting to be 100%. In fact, we just closed on four couple weeks ago, four locations. I'm figuring the exact same occupancy. I'm not changing that number whatsoever. I've got another deal lined up to where a bigger deal. It is, what's occupancy? I want to say it's 82% occupied. I am I am hoping that I can improve that a little bit, but I'm not going to 90%. I may have figured up to 85%. And then I'm adding my fees in there too. Tenant insurance, because the current owner doesn't have that. And to get into the next thing, number four, this owner doesn't have a website. So back in 2020, 2021, if you just put up a website, it's amazing how many people would come and rent with you, right? And that kind of goes back to our phone calls weren't being answered, but we are still getting online rentals because everybody was full, right? So people could still rent a unit from our website, and that saved us. And they could find us that way too. Now, it is really rare to find a self storage site. Now, they're out there, without a doubt, they're out there because I'm hopefully buying one that does not have a website. Um, and it seems like it kind of goes town by town. If there's a town or city where everyone's got a website, I don't want to say that. How do I say this? There are towns where half the town won't have a website, and it doesn't hurt them, right? Because half the town doesn't. But the town that I'm buying in, hopefully buying in on this next deal, pretty much everybody there has a website. There are a couple that don't, and the one that I'm trying to purchase does not. Now they're easy to find because it is a bigger facility, but they don't have a website. So they're missing rentals. They're missing SEO. They're missing people find them on Google Maps, all those things. So, 5 years ago, you could put up a website and pretty much assume that your occupancy would just dramatically go up. That's not the case anymore. Now, will it help me with this next deal? I'm hoping. But if it's a 5% difference just by putting a website up, I think that'll be high. 5 years ago, that would probably be low. You're probably getting 10 to 15% occupied increase just by putting a website up. Number five, value add isn't just about raising rents. Now that is definitely number one still on my list. But people have to, so you kind of have to look at the life cycle of self storage. It was when I got in 2019, it was still somewhat of a kind of looked down upon asset class in a way. There weren't many true investors in it. It was more kind of someone had a piece of land and they're like, yeah, you know what? I've heard self storage is good. Let's put up some buildings. It was kind of just thrown by the wayside. COVID happened. A lot of things changed, including self storage growing up as an asset class. Technology is better. Operators are better. Investors are better. Just everything is better. So you can't just rely on raising rents for your only value add. I've added parking spots. In fact, there's some where I've added 30 to 50 parking spots. And depending on how much that is, that could be another 2 grand the rent roll just by adding parking spots, which is usually pretty simple. Obviously, we talked about fees, tenant insurance. That is a huge one. Don't quote me, and I know I'm recording this, but I think I'm getting a 70% cut on my tenant insurance, and a lot of that has to do with one. I've been able to scale, and I've heard people with more units than I have able to get better cut than 70%. But the more that you have, the bigger cut that you have. The company I was using before, I think I was getting 45% of the revenue from tenant insurance. So all these things you've got to look at. You can't just look at raising rents. You've got to look at fees. Again, we talked about customer service. You've got to have great customer service. We've got a great team right now, but a year ago we were using a third party call center, and for the most part they were okay. But I know for a fact that for any third party call center, right? It's tough to have the same type of service that you're going to have in house because you're controlling more in house, right? You're making the hires, you're making the fires, you're doing the training, you have the SOPs, you have the KPIs, all those things. They're your people that you've trained and that you're watching and that you're training. So customer service is just better. But we've got to kind of look at storage as it's grown up. It's in the life cycle of it's not in its infancy anymore. It's not in teenage years. It's more grown up. And that happened really quickly. And that's just, you can't just look to raise rents and that be the only value add. And then the last one, number six, is kind of piggybacking off just raising rents day one, and that is rate management. And that is something that I've had to get better at and still working at, because it feels like it can be a touchy subject, but in this day and age, everything's increasing in price, right? I mean, I don't want to compare to the internet or cable companies because everyone's got a bad taste in their mouth with them, right? But they'll get you in for a promo rate, and then you know what's coming 12 months later. Everyone knows it. 12 months later, your rate's going up. And depending on how much it goes up, sometimes it's doubling, right? And then you got to call, and then they'll bring it back down to the new promo rate, which is probably still at least $5 or $10 more than what you were paying the month before, right? I'm not saying I necessarily agree with how they do that because they're trying to make you work for your money in a way. But you've got to stay on top of rate management for current renters and new renters. New renters to me is a little bit easier because as your occupancy goes up, it's easier to raise rents. It's just supply and demand. The fact of raising rents for current renters, it seems to be a touchy subject. Seems like it's a little bit, I don't know. it's I don't want to say looked down upon, but it's a little bit tougher for us to do, and that's probably going back to the internet providers, the cable providers that we just have a bad taste in our mouth from them. But we have rising costs at all times. Our insurance, real estate taxes, taxes in general, employments, third party vendors, everything is increasing in price, and our rates have to keep up with that. And that is the while it can be hard to do that, to stay on top of that, it's also the nice thing of owning a business and being in self storage specifically is because I can help control that. So if if my gate contractor has raised rates, he's not whatever it is, $100 an hour anymore. He's $150 an hour. I can do my best to offset that charge by raising rents, by passing those costs on basically to the customers, right? Which is nice. But it's a big thing that, especially for me, I know I've got to stay up on it. I'm not doing a great job. That is a big thing for 2026. In fact, end of last year, start doing a better job, and I want to continue into 2026, rolling with better rate management, and that's the plan. So those are the 6 things that I've seen change on the past 5, 6 years, more than anything. Now there's a lot more in there. I mean, technology's changed, the way to invest, the way to find deals has changed. There's a lot more things too, but these were top 6 that I want to talk about and share with you. And speaking of sharing, if you find this podcast helpful, beneficial, or not, please let me know. If it is helpful, please share. We are growing, which is really cool to see. But I want all types of feedback. If you feel like I'm rambling, if you feel like the information's not informative or not relatable, let me know. Reach out. I'm easy to find. But appreciate everyone for following along. See you next time.